In this powerful episode, our group dives deep into the connection between perfectionism and alcoholism and how striving to be flawless can sabotage sobriety, self-worth, and emotional healing. Jessica, Sarah, Erica, Hope, Julie, and I share raw and honest stories of how perfectionism shaped their drinking and what it looks like to work through those tendencies in recovery. From redefining success and learning to sit with mistakes to practicing self-compassion and choosing authenticity over image, this conversation is full of insight, laughter, and me too moments for anyone struggling with not feeling good enough. So if that's you, welcome. You're in good company.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Julie and Steve. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full there's no space left for alcohol.
If you're looking for a place to start exploring some of the self-reflection that we talk about in this episode, and somewhere safe to practice being imperfect, our weekly Zoom meetings might just be the perfect option for you. We meet on Monday nights, and you'll find plenty of folks who are feeling a lot of the same things you are, and that can be hard to talk about. Visit our website at throughtheglassrecovery.com to get all the details. We hope to see you soon.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We've actually got a full house. This is going to be a really cool, really interesting conversation. We've got a couple of new people. We've got a couple people who have been here before. So we're going to dive into this and see where it goes. I have a feeling this is going to be really relatable for a lot of people. So we will, as always, start with our introductions. Jessica, I'm going to ask you to go first. You want to tell us about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back, guys. It's good to see your faces. So my name is Jessica Guerreri. I am a proud mom of 3 young daughters. I am an author and a writer, and I have 11 years of continued sobriety. Actually, on May 2nd, if it all goes according to plan, I'll have 12 years. I also have a clean date of August 6th. 2021. I separate those two out. And let's see, what else can I tell you? My debut novel, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, which looks like this, will be available shortly after my 12-year sobriety date, which is it's going to be available in bookstores everywhere May 13th, upcoming in almost a month now. You can pre-order it on any platform, and then it'll be available in stores everywhere. The reason that I'm so passionate about my book is it is a peek behind the curtain of mommy wine culture and kind of peeling back those layers of what it looks like once you actually go down the slippery slope of addiction. It is a fiction novel, but it is written very much from my own heart and my own experience. And so I'm hoping that it will enter the book club genre, which has somehow morphed into a wine club genre among mothers. And so I am very excited to enter that space and be a part of that conversation and change the stigma as it relates to addiction and alcoholism.
Definitely. I absolutely love what you're doing. It always makes me smile when you talk about the book club genre has turned, or the book club thing has turned into a wine club thing. And it's so true.
Yeah.
I also just have to tell you, I have pre-ordered your book on my Kindle. I'm going to be flying home from Spain on May 13th. So I'm really hoping it shows up in time for me to have something to read on the plane.
It absolutely will. And it probably actually will show up maybe 12 hours early if you've pre-ordered it. So
Cool. Okay. I cannot wait. I'm so excited to get into that.
Thank
So,
you so much.
yeah, thanks for being here. Okay. All right. We are going to go with the Sarah next. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself too?
Thanks so much, Judy and Steve. It's so great to be back. I'm Sarah Siegel-Kolodziejski, and I have started my sober journey 3 years ago. Well, actually, a little bit more than 3 years ago now. And I kind of was inspired by when I first made the decision to stop drinking is really to find community and connection. And I decided to build my own community, which is called Pure Clarity. And I hold and host events for people to come together to experience mindful drinking, mindful living, all alcohol-free events, and really just really based around mindful living to find ways to, experience things for the first time that have helped me on my journey, meditation, breath work, yoga, fitness, and to be inspired by wellness leaders and health leaders and, people to come together and actually just to build their own community by coming to these events. I just did one last weekend and, it was just a women only event and people felt so rejuvenated and they felt so seen. And that's just so important to me. And so it's a growing community and yeah, and I'm the proud mother of two boys, 21 and 25, and I'm also caring for a 24-month-old right now, due to addiction, in our family. So we've actually taken him in. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You have your plate full doing some really valuable and important things. Yeah,
Yes.
I love
Thank you.
especially what you said about those women feeling so seen. That is one of the most important pieces of this whole journey and why we're all here sharing our experiences because it helps people feel seen sometimes for the very first time. So,
Absolutely.
love what you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we'd like to welcome Erica to the podcast. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself for us?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you for having me here. And if I talk really fast, I'm a very anxious person. So that's just the one thing I'll tell you right off the bat. I live in nice, sunny, humid, hot Austin, Texas. I've got son and husband and 4 dogs. So hopefully they will keep keep quiet while we're doing this. I'm actually on Monday, April 14th. I will be 47 years old and 8 years sober. So
Congratulations.
yeah, I went into detox on my 39th birthday. So that was a huge step, but I know if I had not taken it, I probably wouldn't have celebrated the 40th. So it was one of those that I just had to buckle down and I had to finally commit and finally do it. I'm a personal trainer. That's something I started. I was a special education teacher and I worked also in group homes but when I got sober, I decided chose a different career path. And actually on this day, 7 years ago, I was hired to my first personal training job. So it was just a very big a lot of life changes. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because like I said, I'm anxious. So glad to be so.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you here. It sounds like life really opened up for you with sobriety, and I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I am going to ask you to make sure you stay close enough to your phone or your tablet, whatever you're on, because when you lean back too much, then your audio kind of wobbles a little bit. It wasn't bad, but I'm just going to mention that. We'll cut all of this out of the actual recording. So, uh, anyway, and last but not least, we have Hope.
Yes. I am Hope, and I'm really grateful and appreciative to be nice to see everybody. I am 264 days sober, so almost 100 days away from 1 year. I work in a clinical laboratory at the local hospital, and I will be teaching at the local community college here starting in August. And at the end of the day, I'm really just a girl who is trying to stay sober and hoping that by sharing my experience, I can help somebody to feel less.
Absolutely. Love, love that you're here. It's so nice to be here with all four of you.
Steve hanging out with the ladies, lots of them today.
It's okay. Steve hangs out with a bunch of ladies all the time, so it's cool.
It's not unfamiliar territory. We're good.
What do we know?
Our topic. What was that, Sarah?
I said, no wonder he loves what he does so much.
Right. Okay, so for our topic, perfectionism. So perfectionism is a quiet kind of torment. It tells us that we have to earn our worth, that we have to look like we have it all together and never ever mess up. And for many of us, that pressure was part of what fueled our drinking. Alcohol gave us a break from the constant striving, but in recovery, perfectionism doesn't disappear, it just finds new ways to show up. So today we are talking about what perfectionism looks like in sobriety. Where does it still creep in? What helps you loosen its grip? Um, and how have you started to redefine success or self-worth now that you're in recovery? Anybody is welcome to start, and we will just dive into this. It's a free for all.
For me, I think I'm worried that I'm going to say something wrong, and I hate being the first person to do something because I'm a perfectionist at heart.
Sick. There and to her soft and very real and honest start. I love it.
I think we're so hard on ourselves, and that's obviously what has us in that cycle of drinking, and we're so hard on ourselves, thinking that we have to always be this and that, and we just need to. I've just learned to let go. I've just learned to give myself more grace, more compassion, and really find ways to live that are based around that, and to reframe the mistakes that I've made, and to learn from them. And it's not a destination of getting to the place of being sober. It's the journey, really. It's the progress that we make along the way. So yeah, I feel that you know perfectionism definitely just continues to play out in all different ways. And we think that when I tried to give up drinking and then I wasn't successful. Again, you just get so hard on yourself, and you think but it actually, I never reframed it to think that I tried and it didn't work. But when it didn't work, I would just then spiral. But it didn't have to be perfect, and if I'd had a little bit more compassion with myself at that time, I might have gotten to this place quicker. Absolutely. To jump off of that, Sarah, it's like that idea of what's good enough, right? So we're constantly like feeling like, well, what is the standard? And it's like, are we good? Are we good enough? What is the point at which we will hit the point that we're where we should be, or however that's supposed to go? And I feel like I've hit this point now where like you said, I have to continually show myself compassion and grace, and um give myself the benefit of the doubt, right? Because you can absolutely kill yourself over any scenario at any given point. It could be something as simple as arriving 2 minutes late to the podcast or whatever it's going to do, and then that is the self-sabotage that goes into your psyche to say like, oh, I should have and I didn't, and then we just criticize ourselves. And when we were drinking, that quieted and numbed the internal dialogue, right? The internal conversation that we were having that says we aren't good enough, it isn't enough. And that was what quieted it for a little while. And now we don't have access to that in the same way. But really, what we should be accessing is grace, right? We should be accessing acceptance. Uh, and that's hard. That's not like a given.
Yeah.
It's very hard at times.
You talked about standards. One, so I operated in this space of I didn't really know what people's expectations of me were. So I just hustled and tried to be the very, very, very best that I could be. So everybody would respect me or approve of me or whatever it was. Right. And so one of the exercises that I did for myself and that I now have clients do when they're struggling with perfectionism and all of that negative, like self-critical stuff. Um, so I sat down and I defined what does good enough look like in my life? So what does a good enough wife look like? What does a good enough mom look like? What is a good enough anything? I won't say employee for myself, but for any listeners, employee, or I was volunteering a lot. So I went through each um role that I played in my life, and I just wrote out what's good enough. And if you can't be gentle enough with yourself. What would you tell a friend is a good enough mom? Or what would you tell your friend is a good enough wife? And I actually sat down and wrote out a list of what is good enough, because I would beat myself up if things weren't perfect. But reality is, our standards have to be reasonable and they have to be realistic. And it really helped me to define my standards instead of just always trying to perform to these arbitrary standards that, I would just continue to raise the bar and it would never be possible to be good enough. So it was a really helpful exercise for me in early sobriety. And then also that I like to share with other people that struggle with this stuff.
That's amazing. And you were mentioning other people. And I think that's also that we look outward so much about what they think, what they are, and I think that I used to put too much emphasis on that. And it really just really starts with us and ends with us at the end of the day. Not that we don't care what other people think, but it's, yeah.
We can't let it define us.
Can't let it define us on any level. And their perception is so different than what our perception is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's so different.
Yeah, I agree, because I carried so much from when I was young, and being told I wasn't good enough, being told I was this. And when I started drinking, it's like my emotional health, everything was stunted. It's not like I grew at all. So I didn't overcome those feelings even into a young woman and into my 30s. I still carried all of that with me. And like Jessica said, drinking the alcohol helped just kind of numbed all that and kind of took it all away to where I didn't have to feel it. So now in sobriety, I still feel those things, but I've done things in my life to where I've surrounded myself with people. I surrounded myself with just people who would do anything with me. Like, I didn't care. I just, if they drank, I was drugged, I was fine with them. That's fine. There was no substance. It was superficial. It was fake. And now in sobriety, I have found people that accept me for me, and that, genuinely like the person I am and I'm becoming. And that has really helped me. Like, I still strive for perfection. I'll leave this recording and be like, I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said that. Why didn't I say that? I do that. I beat myself up about those things. But then I'm now rationally thinking, without a drink in my hand, and have done work over the years, that it's okay. There, nobody's thinking the things that I'm thinking. Nobody is berating me on the other end when they get off. They have their own lives. I need to keep myself in check and realize I did my best, and that's who I am. So for me, it's just been surrounding myself with people and support like that I've really found in the Instagram community, because I didn't hide my recovery, but for the first 4 years, I wasn't recovering out loud. I was just really just sober. I wasn't really doing anything, because I was afraid what people would think of me. Are they going to judge me? Because I have people tell me, well, you don't look like this or you don't look like that. It's like, well, no. I mean, then I wanted to get defensive. Now I'm like, I just know people just don't understand sometimes, and there's so much stigma. But now in sobriety, surrounding myself with the right people and the people I've met and that I've met in real life that just have opened up my eyes of like, hey, I'm actually a pretty cool person. And when I do mess up, it's okay. They don't berate me. They don't tell me I'm this. They don't make fun of me. So it's just been a process. And like I said, it still is that process that every day I'm just like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or what can I do better? Why am I not doing this? Because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. But I mean, it's just, I got to take the good and the bad, the ebbs and the flows. So.
Yeah. I'm going to share this with you. So when you said you're going to get off of here and you're going to be like, oh my God, I should have this, should have that, whatever, right? So the very first podcast episode that Steve and I recorded, it took us 3 hours. It was just the two of us. It was not a whole group. It was just us being like, hey, we're Steve and Julie and we're starting a podcast, right? It was 17 minutes long and it took us 3 hours to say the words that we needed to say because of all of the anxiety. And then for I don't know how many months, I would walk away from every recording doing the same thing. Oh my gosh, I said this. I must have sounded like an idiot. People are going to think this. So this is episode 139 of doing podcasts imperfectly every week, right? Like that's what I have done for the last 139 weeks is show up imperfectly I don't script anything. I stumble over my words. I say stupid shit all the time. And I'm so okay with it now. Like, I'm comfortable. And I swear one thing we have to do is just keep doing things imperfectly until it just becomes okay. There's no way I'm ever going to show up here and get every single thing said just right and, impress every person that listens to this podcast. But you do it imperfectly enough times and you're like, okay, I'm all right. I'm good with not being perfect here. You just have to do it in every little part of your life, which, it takes practice.
Right. The world didn't end. I messed up and the world didn't end, right?
Right, exactly. I want to share a story because when Steve asked me to be on this, and I laughed because he was like, just asked and then told me the topic later, and he's like, "But I assume you struggle with this too," and I was like, oh, "Wait, what? Really? How do you know? How did you know?" And so what I've been struggling with lately, and this is like all new territory for me, right? Because my book is available to be read by advanced early readers, and it's on Goodreads, and it's on every single platform that you can for rating. So I, as a person, am being rated out of 5 stars every day. And that's what I'm internalizing, right? And so if I was on a totally earlier time in my sobriety, there is no world in which I would be able to handle the pressures of that, because this is like a very vulnerable book. There's a lot of truth to it. And I'm getting feedback, constant feedback on people's opinion, because that's what they do. They review books, right? And so, as a perfectionist and a recovering alcoholic, it can be like a torture chamber. And what I do and what I've used as a tool for myself is I tell on myself. So I have a social media following, and people have seen me from the jump of like how I started the process of querying agents to getting rejected 100 different times. Um, but I tell on myself and say, you know what, today I checked my Goodreads like 50 times, and I read the bad reviews, and I got in my feelings about it, and it kind of made my heart sink. Like the other day, I got, so far it's been amazing. Amazing. It's the highest like it can be for what it is right now. And again, it's like it's not all fives though. It's not all fives. It's fives and fours. And then there's a few threes, and then there's a few twos, and then recently there was a one, and somebody just like went off on me and was just like, this character is horrible. She's not relatable. Obviously, she's based on me. So I was like, oh my God, she hates me. And really, what it's taken is, and this is an important thing to come away with, just as this topic as a whole, and what I've had to do over and over and over again, is recognize that self-worth doesn't come from other people. It comes from within, right? And so I am not a review. I am not how many books I sell. I am not the praise that I am given. Everything is internalized, that comes from myself exclusively. And this is a lesson that, had I not learned this before this all happened, I wouldn't be able to stay sober, because it would be adding to the dialogue in my head that says, oh my gosh, they don't like me. I'm not good enough. This book isn't good enough. And to me, no matter what, I can hold my head up high and say, I am so proud of this. I am so proud of myself. I love this book. I am proud that one person has reached out to me to say, you know what, this book has changed my relationship with alcohol. And then I'm like, and I'm done. That's all I needed. I don't care about the rest of the reviews. But it's this like, I still, even in coming on 12 years, I still have to be like, hey, you guys, I need you to change my Goodreads password. I can't stop. I can't stop looking at it. I can't stop reading it. I can't stop internalizing the criticism. And, some days are better than others.
I think I can definitely piggyback off of that in a slightly different way. And I think with our perfectionist tendencies, a big part of kind of healing from them is the self-reflection piece of where do they come from. And for me, my unrelenting standards have always come from traumatic experiences that I went through in my childhood, right? I understand perfectly well that if I did everything perfectly, and even then I was still in danger. And I've carried that with me into my adult life. But what was always my escape was my academics, was school. I could go to school and I knew that I was safe. I could learn, I could grow there. But it was the same thing where, I had to be perfect at home. And even that wasn't good enough. So what was good enough at school if it wasn't all straight A's, if I wasn't the top honor student, if I wasn't continuously succeeding and going the furthest that I could go, then it just wasn't enough. And it was really critical at certain points for my mental health. It was a very difficult standard that I set myself to because it wasn't possible. I think part of the question prompting us for this podcast was, how do you redefine success or self-worth? And I think that's what you were talking about with like the ratings and the reviews of your book, right? Like knowing what is actually a benchmark of success, and not, it doesn't have to be all 5 stars, right? So, I was going to get a PhD, and I felt like my level of success and my self-worth was tied up in that. If I didn't finish the PhD, then I was nothing. I had nothing. This was all for nothing. I'm worthless. Like, there's no reason to keep going. And then it came to a certain point where I had to realize that it wasn't working for me. And for so many years after that, I made the active choice to drop out of the program. I could have done it, but I just chose that it wasn't working, for a variety of different reasons. But I spiraled after that because like my definition of success and my definition of my self-worth from other people and within was always tied up in academia. It was to the point where, I took a long break from academia, and it was necessary to recover and to realize that, you know, my self-worth is the same before my degrees as it is after any of the ones that I have gotten and any of the ones that I will get in the future. It doesn't matter necessarily that I get the opportunity to teach at a college again. That doesn't mean I'm any more worthy now than I was before. And I think that was a really big turning point for me as well.
I remember the first time my therapist was like, you are worthy, like you have inherent worth and value simply because you're alive. No human on earth is any more worthy or any less worthy of love. And it took me 8 or 10 years to actually get those words from my head to my heart where I could really believe that. Um, and it would like that was long before I quit drinking. I was really struggling because for me and for most of us, I think perfectionism and self-worth are tied together, right? In Hope's case, it's that you were not safe. For me, it was I felt loved if I was perfect. That's when my parents said nice things to me. That's when they approved of me. And those words, that was love. That was all my parents knew. God bless them because they did their very best. But it was like that they couldn't show affection and show love. And so their words were what showed love for me. So you did so good. We're so proud of you, all of that stuff. That's what made me feel like I was worthy. So that meant I just had to achieve more. I had to be more perfect. I had to do more. I had to always, like you said, be the best, straight A's, top student, everything. And I just carried that into adulthood because that's what made me feel worthy. And to finally separate what I achieve and what I look like on the outside and what my life looks like on the outside from my self-worth, which are completely unrelated. And that is a journey all on its own, completely outside of sobriety and recovery, getting to the point where all of your worth comes from inside. It is so much easier said than done.
Julie,
Um,
ooh, go. You go.
Okay. And I think many of us, like myself, I'm on a lot of different journeys. Like everything is so intertwined and interrelated, like all of these paths that kind of go like this: my mental health journey, my recovery, for my sobriety, and I've struggled, and this is a part of, perfectionism too, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, all of those things. I'm trying to fit this mold of what I think people want from me and not necessarily what do I need or want for myself. And I mean, I'm still learning that at almost 47 years old. In 2 days, I'm still trying to figure out, like, what does Erica want? Because I tell people, like, I got sober at 39, but I'm only really 8 years old because it's taken 8 years to like really kind of discover who I am and my worth. And you're talking about worth, and people can tell me, you're loved, you're worthy, you're all this. And I can hear those words, but I don't feel them. Like you said, from here to your heart. Like, I'm just like, okay, yeah. I mean, my husband will even tell me things today. And if I hear them from like 5 other people and I say it to him, he's like, I've told you that. And I'm like, oh, because it's like, I need this repetitive. And like you said, like, it's not, I shouldn't be looking at the reviews or the likes or all this other stuff, but it's hard for me to get past those and get past all of those things. I'm learning how to do that for myself and how to be my biggest cheerleader and support myself. And that's like the hardest thing I've had. Sorry, I'm a crier sometimes. That's like the hardest thing I've had to do, besides getting sober. It's just the path of just trying to figure out who I am. So anyway.
No, it's huge. It's huge. You don't have to apologize for crying here. We cry a lot. You said, and I'm going to reiterate these words because I think every person listening to this podcast needs to think about this. What do I need or want for myself? Because as perfectionists, we all lived our lives for what other people would approve of, I would bet. I think I can probably speak for most of us and say we all lived in a state of trying to hustle for somebody else's approval, somebody else's validation. And so that is probably one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves, Erica. That's a really, really good point.
It's one of the hardest things to find when you've given yourself away for so long. Perfectionism, to me, when I'm listening to it, it sounds like a version of giving yourself away for exterior approval. It also makes you feel good in the moment because, goddamn, I did something really awesome and I worked my ass off for the thing, and it still never ends up being good enough. And so you find yourself stuck in this form of self-manipulation to try and become something that you believe you should be that you could never achieve. And if it's not for you, it's for what you think someone else thinks of you as well. And when you've put 39 years into it, Erica, and I mean, even all of you ladies, you've put a good portion of your life into that perfectionism piece. Undoing that, untying the litany of knots that it's going to take to get to the root source of every little bit. It's not just, I'm a perfectionist, there's one root source. Erica, you talked about all of these little paths, and each little path probably has its own little set of knots where it come from maybe a different past experience or combined experiences to create another set of uncomfortable things.
And I've learned too that when one of these paths, I'll be quick, is just like, say my mental health is struggling, then the path where my emotional sobriety, my emotional regulation starts struggling. And then my sobriety, my recovery can start struggling. That's how they're connected. When those things become, or the detours, the sidetracks, the U-turns and all these things, when it all changes, it's all affected. It's just a chain and it's a reaction.
Yeah, and I think we're so conditioned with our self-talk as well. And I've been on this journey recently of doing more work with Joe Dispenza, meditations in the morning, meditations in the evening. And that's really dramatically changing my life and helping me on my recovery because there's so much, like I related to you, Hope, with regard to, your childhood. I had a traumatic childhood and had that conditioning about if I had to do this, if I did this, then this would happen. Similar thing. So that subconscious programming at an early age and even throughout our lives can have obviously has such a connection with how we are as people today. And is unpacking that as well. I mean, I find that really perfectionism can also be some way of control, right? We try and control something. And, what are we trying to control? And so, going back and unpacking that too. So, when I first started on my journey, I started listening to hypnosis tapes with Georgia Foster. And that was something that really helped me in the beginning because that was rewiring my brain. And I'm really kind of on that journey right now of just the reconditioning, the rewiring and the affirmations. And it can sound woo-woo, but the affirmations are obviously just really powerful for our minds and our brains and our body and the energy in our body that we're carrying. So, it's just unpacking a lot.
Well, it's crazy, right? Because you grew up, we probably all grew up hearing you are what you eat sort of terms or sayings. And it's the same thing with the words. It's the same thing with what we say to ourselves and the language that we use with ourselves, like our internal voice. I'm still swallowing those words. Those are things that if I work to change what you're talking about, like the affirmations, and it's a set of beliefs that I have to work through to change what that perspective is going to look like for me. I might not be a perfectionist. I could actually be one of the versions of the antithesis of a perfectionist. I would probably I do a great job of being around perfectionists and them going, "What the fuck are you doing?" Yeah. Because I kind of just wing it. I'm like, I'm going to go and do this thing. Do you have a plan? Like, what do you have written down? Nothing. I'll figure it out on my way. And they're like, but that's impossible. Like, you can't. And that's kind of how I operate. And it works for me. And the perfectionism works for you guys. It's just, so
Steve, do you have your own set of standards? Like you have to meet your own personal standards within? Like you could be winging it, but it should be according to this or no?
Also, I still have I still have my own set of standards, but
Yeah.
I don't
rigid in your.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility and spontaneity that is allowed to happen within that, because it has to, because there's right, like, go ahead.
I'm going to say this about Steve because I find it fascinating. He can make a mistake and be like, oops, I screwed up. And he can move on with his life like it didn't even happen. Right? Like he can go, and I'm like, no, because if I make a mistake, especially if it's public, which Steve and I do a lot of very public things now. So like on the internet in front of thousands of people, and he can do a thing and he's like, oh, okay, well, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like that would, I mean, depending, I will have to work hard to keep myself out of a spiral. And he's like, okay. So he has standards, but like, if shit happens, shit happens. He doesn't internalize it and have to process and fight with it. And I feel like you ladies probably know what I'm talking about and are like, what kind of alien is that can just make a mistake and be like, oh, oops, okay.
I did something.
Right?
Surround yourself with the right people, by the way. I mean, you guys balance each other, right? So,
Steve, I think I'm pretty similar to you in that I've learned, maybe it's just in motherhood and like having more children than I can handle most days, that like, I like to say the mistakes and say the things out loud when I do them, because I found that like the feedback loop that I get is always in like understanding. And it's like everybody else is like, oh my God, yes, like this is, because and then I feel seen. So like for me, I very much go to that place, not because I'm like I'm ashamed of not doing it right, but because I'm getting validation in the fact that other people are as flawed and imperfect as me. Where I lose an audience and where like I wouldn't sell a book is if I were to say, I am the most put together mom that ever went through the carpool line, and I am the PTO president, and I am this. It's like, where did everybody go? And I feel much more seen, but I'm also more authentically myself as like, oh yeah, like my kids could like walk in here any minute with like no pants on, and I'd be like, hey guys, remember when I was supposed to be on this thing? And it's like, I feel like that's more relatable to the real life, So, but that's hard. Like I used to exist in a space too where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm being seen, and I'm being seen as a sober woman. So my standard for myself is that much higher because I have to represent this like completely not flawed version, because look at me, this is the sober version. So like just the hot mess could be a hot mess in her drinking and whatever, and that's fine, and she can be falling down, but like look at me now, I am sober, therefore I should be good enough, I should be blah blah blah. And so then when other people don't like me, other people don't agree with me, it's almost like a fall from grace for myself of like, oh, wow, guess what? I'm also not perfect in sobriety too. What? Is that true? Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, it is true. You're not going to be, and you're not going to be likable. You're not going to be, it comes from within anyways. Like success isn't universal. It's personal. And it's like whether or not you're being seen. And to me, that's the measure of success. Like, do people come away from this and they go like, oh, I actually feel like I actually know who she is. And then that's where I'm like, oh, that's success to me, because for so long we weren't seen, right? Who were we?
Brene Brown talks a lot about perfectionism. And one of the things she talks about is that if you have the perfect persona on all of the time, it's a wall that doesn't allow you to connect with other people. And it leaves us all so alone when that's the only thing that we allow people to see. So yeah, I completely relate with that. Hope, go ahead.
So this was relevant maybe a few more minutes ago, but I was just
Still relevant.
find a funny story. It's funny now, but it was definitely hard in the moment, right? But I think it's just a good example of like that perfectionist tendency and like how strong it runs, right? And it is nice to hear that, the longer you stay sober and the longer you work at it, the more tools you get to work on it. But so me and my boyfriend were sitting in his truck and he asked me to play music. And so I was playing music and it was going great. But then he asked me very nicely to skip one song because he didn't like it. And I spiraled and I was like, okay, then I'm just turning the music off and we're not going to do this anymore. And I'm so sorry for even playing music. I can't believe I even thought to do that. It was a stupid idea. But we were able, even with how hard it maybe got, to slow it down. And he was like, where is this coming from? And I was like, like I just one transgression, and that's right where my brain still goes sometimes, even with all of the progress that I've made. But also to speak to that, I guess, is that if you had asked me on this particular episode of this podcast or any episode of any of these, I would not have had the same tools like just a few weeks ago that I feel like I have today. And that's how fast I feel like I am growing within sobriety. And that's a very exciting thing. Even if some days it feels like I'm not making any progress whatsoever.
The growth ebbs and flows for sure.
You can't perfectionize the growth anyway.
No, and how easy is it to try to be a perfectionist even in sobriety? But I think, it just depends on where we're at in life on any given day. There are days that I can totally make a fool of myself on social media and be like, just blow it off. And there's other days where I'm like, Steve, I need you to talk me down. It depends on where we are, what else has happened that day? What else are we going through? What memories have we been, whatever. And so I think it's okay that, I've said forever, perfectionism, like my recovery is more recovering from perfectionism than it is recovering from addiction. Recovering from perfectionism has been harder for me. And I want to say I almost like quote unquote relapse, where I just fall back into the negative thinking and then I have to work to get myself back out of it. And, I get better and better as time goes on. But I think this is something we're all, if it's a natural, innate thing in us to be perfectionistic, I think we're going to continue battling it off and on, depending on what life throws at us. That is just what a lifelong journey of anything looks like, I think.
I think that goes back to where you said, like, it's a form of control. Things aren't working out, things aren't whatever, and then I'm going to go back to an old coping mechanism, which is my perfectionism, so I can regain control of these aspects of my life that I don't have control over. And then does that lead to, here's a question for fun, might be vulnerable. Does that lead to, when things don't go your way, does it lead you to try and manipulate people in other situations to try and achieve the goal that you're looking for? That's kind of an ugly, nasty topic to think about, but I mean, in perfectionism, if it's not going your way, it generally doesn't just involve you. It involves other people in your life, wife, like husband, co-workers, you name it. Do you get stuck in trying to manipulate them into achieving the thing that helps you get to where you get to, or whatever?
I don't, be personally, no, I tend to give up and quit. I'm a procrastinator, like to the bone. But I don't really manipulate or try to to make things sway my way, I will just stop. I will throw in the towel, and but then I will go back and I will tear myself apart for not following through, not doing it, not this or that. So it's like a rock in a hard spot sometimes. I'm like, I'm damned if I'm I'm damned if I don't. So what do I do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel that I look back at my life and feel how many times have I been in situations where it hasn't worked out? And I'm talking about the past and I'm even talking about the future, but my view on that is different today, being sober than it was then. It was more chaotic then, that I would be trying to put a square peg in a round hole if things didn't work out, if a relationship didn't work out, if a job didn't work out, or if something didn't work out on a big level. I would try and make it work, and it wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't. And today if things are not flowing, if things are not happening, and I'm not talking about things aren't easy, because everything that is deserving takes work and takes commitment and takes a lot, but it should flow. And I think if it doesn't flow and if it doesn't work out, it's not meant to be. That's just what I've learned today. And I was really thinking about that the other day, and how much I battled up against, those things in the past. And today like I said in the beginning, I've learned to let go more than I've ever let go in my life. So
I think I can also answer your question, Stephen, that I absolutely do that, and I hate that I do that. But in terms of trying to, I guess, like almost like control or even, I hate using the word because I don't want to feel like I'm a manipulative person, but I guess inherent little bit of me that is because of these. And so, I'll have this vision of like, oh, we're going on a cute date, so we both need to look cute, right? And so I'll be like, oh, like I'll talk to my boyfriend. I'm like, are you really gonna wear the flip flops? Like, like can't you put on like real shoes? And it's like, just let him wear the flip flops. Like it's like doesn't matter. You guys are a year and a half in. You're in love. Like, just calm down.
and he probably looks cute in flip-flops.
I'm sure he does. Yeah, I don't know. It like I'm still having trouble letting things like that go, honestly, because I think I'm still so young in my sobriety, and I'm very proud of myself for how far I've come. But I think I'm just in the early beginning stages of kind of like realizing that I even do these things. Like, Steve, I just realized that I do this at all like a month ago. Um, and I still find myself doing it. And I'm like, well, maybe one day, just got to keep working at these.
I'm 4 years in and I still find myself doing stuff and I'm like, whoa, I've been doing this for this long? Crap. It just gets easier to change,
Yeah.
I find, as time goes on. So, like, the little bits of self-awareness that you catch yourself in the things that you do, you gain a kind of an understanding of where you're at. And so it becomes easier to say, okay, I see what I'm doing here. I see this isn't helping me at all. I need to stop, reframe, try again, or do something a little bit different. So with experience comes the ability to pivot
Yeah. Mhm.
sooner. That's it doesn't mean it goes away. It just means that you have a better handle on how you react in certain situations.
Yeah, you have the willingness now, right? Like the willingness to want to because you've seen the other side. Like you've existed in actual hell. And it's like I wish recovery for every human because it does open your eyes to self-reflection and self-growth in a way that is like nothing I've ever seen because the most interesting people I've ever met in my life are those in recovery because they have the willingness to be able to want to change and to want to open up and be like, oh, maybe my way of doing it isn't actually the perfect or the right way. And I can learn and I can take, I mean, that's the whole purpose of you guys' podcast is like whole pieces of wisdom from other people's recovery and other people's journey and take what you want and leave the rest. It's like, otherwise, what are we doing here, guys?
Yep. And the fact that you've already picked this out and you've discovered it, like, makes me excited for you.
Yeah.
because you have this whole little journey of non-perfection to experience. And it's actually pretty fun, even though sometimes it sucks, because
Totally.
you get to you get to learn so much about yourself on the way. It's
I think as a perfectionist too, when you're talking Hope about what you're, like when you said, I hate even admitting this, but this is this thing I do. It is so hard for us as perfectionists to say, I do this creepy thing I'm really not proud of. Like, and I mean, we all have those things where we're like, you don't want anybody to see it because we're supposed to be perfect. So then you don't even want to admit it. You don't want to admit it to yourself. God knows you don't want to admit it to another person, right? For me, that started with like, I have a drinking problem. I don't even want to admit that to myself, let alone do I want to tell another person about this. But then it's all these little discoveries, like you're talking about. Like, I definitely can be manipulative, and I don't like that about myself, but it's also true. And as soon as I can own that, and I can talk about it, then I can start doing something about it. And so the longer I've been willing to admit to these like creepy, unhealthy things that I do, I'm sorry, creepy is probably a bad word, but there are certain things that I do where I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me that I am this kind of person, right? And then but as soon as you can own it, then you can change it. And I think that's really important, and it's one of the things that's hard for anybody that struggles with perfectionism, because we don't want to admit to ourselves that we're not perfect, and God forbid anybody else find out. So, I think it maybe adds a little bit of a complex layer to us self-reflecting because it comes with a lot of shame.
Oh, hey, no, you go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say that, I do love that you say that, and I do appreciate you guys kind of, like, validating me and all of that, and something that I think I've recognized in this conversation and even a little bit before when I was reflecting is that, like, my perfectionism, I think, is what kept me drinking because, like you said, I didn't want to admit that I had a problem because that meant that I was inherent flawed in some ways, and then also, I would say my perfectionism is what led me into my relapses when I first started trying to get sober because I was so scared to admit to anybody that I was still having cravings, that I was still thinking of having a drink. And I wouldn't tell anybody because I felt all of that shame and all of that. Like, no, I'm supposed to be this perfect sober person. No one can know that I'm slipping. But then that resulted in me having no support. I hadn't built the tools myself. And I would fall right back to that same maladaptive coping strategy every time. And I want to share Hope, like, I applaud you for all the things that you've shared, and, thank you so much for your vulnerability with that. The part of the reason that I have a separate sober and clean date is because for me, I work a 12-step program, but inside my 12-step program, they talk about substances other than alcohol, and so according to my 12-step program, like, I was not sober when I started to use other substances. And I respectfully disagree because I wasn't using alcohol. I was going back into the other isms that I was trying to self-medicate with. But for me, it was that very same thing. I had 6 years of sobriety under my belt, and I was like, you're not gonna take that from me because I started abusing THC. But I had to come to a point where I had to recognize, you know what, I actually am not able to do any substances safely. That it goes right back into all of the problem behaviors that were related to my alcoholism and my alcohol problem as well. And I think that that was an important thing for me because it had everything to do with my perfectionism of being like, no, look, like, hold me up to the standard. Look, I said I was going to get sober. You know what? I did get sober. As soon as I said I was going to get sober, I did. And so I was like, don't take that from me. Don't take that because this is the thing I'm hanging my hat on. And so I had to reconcile with that. And it wasn't perfect, right? It wasn't that, like, it wasn't, and also nobody else gets to say but me, right? Or nobody else is coming in to say like, well, you as an alcoholic, or even use that term. It's all you. It's all your definition of it anyways. But like, like, so just as I knew, I was like, oh, look at me being back in addiction again. I can't stop. I want to stop. I can't stop. But only you know that. Only you know that journey for you. But it's amazing how our minds can manipulate us into trying to go back into that addictive state, right? It'll try and convince me of something completely otherwise.
all right. I think I'm probably going to wrap this up. We're at a really good time. And we've had, I think you guys,
Okay.
for our listeners, I just face palmed myself. But anyways, you ladies have shared a lot of amazing insights when it comes to perfectionism, being hard on yourself, perfectionism as sabotage. Hope, you talked about the unrelenting standards. Erica, you talked about all or nothing. And even as I say these things, I can hear bits of the same thing in alcoholism and recovery in itself. It's like perfectionism. You're using the same tools. I hear you all express the same tools that you use in recovery, you're using in your getting over, it's probably the wrong term, recovering
Perfectionism.
perfectionism. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Julie. Yep, I didn't get that one perfect at all. Anyways, continuing to show yourself some passion. Julie, you talked about using a tool about defining what good enough is. And while you guys were doing this, I was like, what's the perfect question to ask a perfectionist? I asked the Google, and that was the answer that Google gave me, was to define what good enough was. It was the first thing that come up. And Jessica, I do this all the time too. And you talked about telling on yourself, expressing it out loud so you don't internalize your own perfectionism. And then you all shared about lessons that you learned taken from action. So I want to say thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Erica. And thank you, Hope, for joining us and sharing your thoughts and experiences. I really appreciate you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you guys so much. Huge thanks to all of our lovely guests on this episode and to all of you who have joined us to listen today. We are always so grateful to share this space with you. If you haven't left a rating and review yet, please remember to do that. It's a huge part of getting our podcast recommended to others that could benefit from it. Thank you so much.